All right, I'm back with another video. This time I need to bring a bit more gusto because some of my students have been falling asleep at night watching these videos. We are studying the one and only Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, and we're going to start in a slightly odd place talking about copyright. Now, the reason we're going to do that is because when it comes to analyzing songs, sometimes we can get a little distracted by certain things, and so it's worth thinking about what a song actually is. And so a song is the musical work, which is the melody mainly, sometimes the harmony and rhythm. It's a little bit the lyrics, and it's also a sound recording. And they're three separate things. And the reason that matters is because there is one melody for Bohemian Rhapsody, there's one set of lyrics for Bohemian Rhapsody, there are 100 or hundreds of sound recordings. The original CD recording is a sound recording. The Live Aid one is a sound recording. The 50 TV things that they recorded is 50 different sound recordings. And so when we're analyzing the song, we really want to analyze this one, the musical work, more than we really want to analyze the lyrics or the sound recording, if we can. Just helps us delineate a little bit between the different parts and helps us analyze it. Let's move on. First thing we're going to talk about is context. So we've got down here Freddie Mercury on vocals and piano. We've got Brian May on guitar and backing vocals. I think that's John Deacon. It looks like him. He plays bass guitar. And then we've got Roger Taylor on drums and BV. It's from their third album, A Night at the Opera, from 1975. Done. The genre that they play in would be called progressive rock. Now, progressive rock is a little bit hard to pin down as to what it is. So rock music is essentially a drum beat that goes boots and cats and boots and cats, that kind of thing, with probably electric or distorted guitar and simple catchy melodies. So then progressive rock really could be said to be advanced rock or complicated rock. The key word is progressive. It progresses rock to a next thing. Some of the things that can happen in the stereotypical is long solos, long albums, nonsense or fantasy lyrics, completely over the top stage sets, costumes, performances, and a lot of technical skill to an extreme point. And perhaps you might also add there that there's a fusion of genres in progressive rock, where you might get rock to opera to ballad. And importantly, they're not squashed vertically, so it's not a combination of opera and rock in the one thing. They're usually butted up against each other. So that's kind of progressive rock. So let's look at it in the case of Queen themselves. This little 5-bar passage I've got here really kind of highlights most of Queen's style, I think. You've got some operatic styling things in the backing harmonies. So this is right before the hard rock section, if you want to find it yourself. The guitars are layered, lots of layers to give it a really full sound. They avoided synthesizers, so David Bowie's floating around and he's kind of using a lot of synthesizers. They just didn't want to use synthesizers, they used piano only. There's elements of Led Zeppelin. You've got sort of heavy rolling tom drums, you've got distorted guitar. There's really strong classical melodies. You've got some sequences up here, that kind of stuff. You've got an unusual form. So you don't have a chorus, you've got a time change, you've got a meter change. These are all quite different things. You've got strong lyrics, so really strong messages coming through that all the songs are not necessarily about falling in love. Some are, but most aren't. And then you've got high harmonies. So you can see this is 8VA, super high. The backing harmony is 8VA, so super high harmonies. So it gives you a good insight into the style and genre of Queen. Let's look specifically at the form of Bohemian Rhapsody. So obviously we started with an introduction at a ballad tempo in the key of B flat major. The ballad then section, or the ballad section, sort of is B flat with a little bit of E flat in it. Depending on how you think about it, it's got a bit of both. We jump into the opera section, which changes key and really goes double time at this point. So yeah, that's the next section. Going into A major. We've got a hard rock section when we're truly in E flat major now. And then we finish with really, I guess it's the ballad section, but starting again in a different key. Or maybe it's still hinting at the E flat. No, it's in a different key. So at the end there, we might call that an ending or the coda or the end ballad section. I don't know the exact name we would give that because we're making up the names. Melody. Now, this fascinates me with this song. This melody is bonkers. It's nuts. It doesn't make sense. And yet this song is one of the most famous songs ever, the most loved songs ever. You put it on, people sing to it. And this melody is crazy. Like, look at this. Look at the shapes here. It starts on the 6th. And we've got chromatic notes going through it. There's no real phrases or anything like that. What is happening? Why is this such an amazing melody? Let me give you the secret. Let me ruin the song a little bit for you. If you don't want to ruin it, better stop now. But what is happening is it's all about delayed resolution. So here we've got the tonic. In fact, we've got the leading note to tonic. We've got a nice cadence. And so this is the first sort of phrase. But the problem is that the lyrics really don't resolve here. So even though the music resolves, the lyrics don't resolve. So with this delayed resolution, we want to find out what happens in the next verse and the next phrase. So we go forward. Let's see what happens. The next phrase resolves really well. So you can see here we've got this sort of chromatic resolution resolving on the tonic. However, of course, this time we don't resolve the chords. Now the chord underneath that resolved top note is not resolved, so it feels like it hasn't resolved, feels like a delayed resolution, pushes us into the next section. What happens in the next section? Well, this section doesn't really resolve at all, so it really aggressively pushes you into the guitar solo. The guitar solo goes in through here, and then that really, really aggressively resolves here on the tonic, back onto 1. It should be fine, but of course we're now in a different key. So again, it pushes you into the next section because you're thinking, well, how does this section resolve? We're getting towards the end of the opera section now, where the phrase is here, and we've got this beautiful sequence that builds up and finishes on a tonic here. It finishes on the tonic here. It's the tonic chord, sort of. It should be like one of these big classical endings. That kind of thing. But of course, if you're noticing carefully, it's actually a B flat 7 chord. And of course, that's not resolved. It pushes you into the E flat section, which is not the tonic key. So you don't feel like it's resolved again. So we move forward again. This is the end of the next section, the hard rock section, or the next end phrase. And again, it looks like it's resolved. We're now in the key of E flat major. We're on E flat, E flat, E flat. We get a little bit of a 7 leading tone 1. It should resolve, but then it's too resolved. It's not where the song's going to finish. And so Freddie drops off onto the 5th here, leaving it again unresolved. Pushes us into the next section. This is right at the end, and this is very close to the resolution. We're in the key of E flat major. We're going 7, 1. We've got a tonic chord. It's almost all there, except of course, this doesn't resolve. Look at the chords. They start descending chromatically down to this sort of, I don't know, going, where is it going? Nobody knows. It's unresolved again. And I would argue perhaps as well that this lyric line is really not quite resolved either. So pushes us forward. Where are we going? We get to the final resolution. And here we finally get an F note on an F chord. It kind of sounds like it comes out of nowhere, but that's not true, because when you think about it, where did we start? Genius by Freddie Mercury, we started with an F. And that's why it sounds like it's the right chord to finish. It's why you take a breath at the end, you go, finally I'm there. 6 minutes later, I actually have the resolution. I started on an F, I finished on an F, I've got a tonic chord with a tonic melody. It's all resolved, and the lyrics are resolved. I'm going to go any way the wind blows, resolved. And that's why it's absolute genius by Freddie Mercury and Queen. So that's what's happening in the melody. I mean, really nothing else matters from that point on, because that's the genius of the song. But we'll explore some other things. Why not? We're here, we may as well. Harmony. We've got a fun little thing called a secondary dominant that appears all over the place. And what that means is that in the key of B flat major, this chord should be C minor 7 or C minor, but we make it a dominant chord, C7, and that makes us temporarily think we're in a different key. So this feels like this is going to resolve to F major. So the same in B flat major, if we had a D minor chord, which is what we should have in the key of B flat major, if we made that a D7 chord instead, that would feel like it's going to resolve to the key of G major. So it kind of pushes us out of the key a little bit. So there's heaps of that going on. It's also in Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? We first found that there. We've obviously got chromatics with everywhere. This would be like a 2, 5, and then should resolve perfectly to 1 here, but we don't. We get a bit more of that delayed resolution in the harmony this time where we got chromatic chords. It's obviously very strange too, right? You don't often get that. We also have a sort of a theme of descending chromatics where you can see the bass notes heading downwards here chromatically. The chords this creates up in these chord symbols are really unhelpful and not very accurate. The guitar player is not playing that. Brian May is not playing those chords. It's just a function of trying to convert piano chords into guitar chords. All that's really happening is this whole thing is just a C minor chord with the left hand going down, and it makes those chords. So it's really just this chord. And it makes those weird chords that nobody would ever actually play. This is just a little favorite of mine that I thought I'd throw in. It sort of starts over here with an E flat, B flat over a D. And then this chord here should be A flat major in the key of E flat, but just throws an A flat minor in there, which is just a lovely little touch you hear quite often. A great little technique. Sounds like this. We should have this chord, but we get this chord. Wow, yeah, beautiful. All right, what are we on to? Tone. Let's talk about Freddie Mercury's tone. He's obviously got an amazing singing voice. He's got a really fast tremolo. He's got like a really rock growl in there that's amazingly hard to do with Power and Night After Night. And then he has a really tender side. If I press a button, I think you can hear it.
I've made a few. I've had my share of sand kicked in my face, but I've come through. And I need to go.
Okay, that's that section. Let's move on. What a singer, hey? What a singer. Articulation and expression. Obviously, there's a lot of articulation and expression in this piece. However, in the score that we're studying, there's only this little staccato and no dynamics at all through the whole piece. So that's easy marks there. Next, rhythm and meter. A couple of interesting things going here. We start as a ballad at 72. We double time it into the operatic section, which is, I guess, fun. And then we change meter to a compound quadruple or 12/8 for the hard rock section. And the getting into the hard rock section is really interesting how they do that. And first off, rhythmically they put this dotted note into a quaver, which makes it sound like a little bit swing. And then on top of that, this sort of eighth note pattern starts out straight and then starts to get swung until it sounds like a triplet. So what does that sound like? Straight first. Start to swing it. Oh, wrong note there. Yeah, really, really fun. And then as a little added bonus for kicks, they then, if you just analyze this for a second, this is actually crotchet. So they went to the triplet feel, but we've got crotchets here. It's just so clever, right? Because it's using the crotchets then to make a syncopated beat, that kind of stuff. So really clever stuff again. Some compositional devices. How did they actually write the song? Well, I don't know. Sat in a room, probably. We got a sequence. That's what we got. This bit here is a sequence. Oh, lovely. Building up. I like that. Or sort of a sequence, isn't it? It's close enough. Syncopation, we just talked about that. Here we've got a nice little syncopated bass line. If you really care, this note here, go and work it out, is crazy syncopated. You can't syncopate something more than that. The middle note of the triplet as such. The same section, oh, wrong button. Same section is also called a riff or an ostinato. That's a repeated figure in the bass. We've got some pedal points or pedal, which means one note in the left hand while the chords change. So the chords here don't change, but obviously the chords up here are changing a little bit in the harmony. So that's kind of a pedal point. Not a perfect example, but pretty close. Some innovations of Queen. So I would probably argue that Queen don't necessarily innovate as much as they do the innovations of the time a million times better than everybody else, which kind of makes them the pioneers of the innovations, I guess. So anyway, the first thing they do is fuse genres. This little example that I showed you before is the great little 4 bars before the hard rock section, showing a lot of these innovations. So you've got the fusion of genres, you've got opera, and then you've got this hard rock section. The length and form, the whole song is 6 minutes long. You can see there's no chorus, and it's changing to compound duple again, which is pretty weird. The extreme multi-tracking, so the harmonies aren't just one each. They overdubbed the harmonies hundreds of times just to make some small amounts of harmonies, apparently. So 3-part harmony, but it's sung 150 times or something like that. And also the overdubbing here of the guitars is quite unique. And we're talking about the sound recording there, I guess. Obviously, we've got an opera section, again up here. The tight vocal harmonies, again up here. And the lyrics, which this is not a great example, this section, but of course the lyrics aren't about falling in love. So I'd argue that they are the innovations, particularly the fusion of genres, I think. And remember that we're not fusing them vertically like in jazz, we're kind of fusing them next to each other. The opera leads into the hard rock, leads into the ballad, leads into something else. That's kind of the innovation they did there. What have I got next? Oh, okay, so we're getting towards the end and we're looking at some of Scarza's pre-prepared exam questions. So let's see how we're going. Name the specific song section which this score comes from. So that's relatively easy. That's a bit of a give me. Look at the different sections and try and work it out. Nice and easy. Explain the innovative process employed in recording the vocal parts. Well, that's not a musical question and it's not in the syllabus. So, yeah, great. Well, apparently they recorded the vocal parts 180 times in overdubs. How anybody would know that? Did someone count 100? No one counted that. Ridiculous. Anyway, 180 times, and then they mixed that down into single tracks. So that, I'm guessing, is the innovative approach. Usually a 3-mark question would require you to give some sort of evidence of that. So you would then say, you can find that in the introduction, or you could find that in the opera section. Name one studio effect applied to the vocal parts. Again, not in the syllabus and not about music. But just because it's a difficult question, we don't leave it blank. We can use our mind to try and work it out. So, I mean, I can't see how you can get this question wrong, because how could anyone prove that they didn't use that effect? So you could just stick anything. I don't know, reverb, delay, tube amplifier. I mean, they panned it probably, left or right. I mean, you could put anything down there. You could put, they put a wire attached to Freddie Mercury's back molars and they played the sound through that once. I mean, who's going to prove it wrong? Anyway, give it a go. What's next? Consider the following 4 musical characteristics. Hard panning of the guitar left and right. Not a musical characteristic, so I'm going to ignore that. E flat tonality to F. Okay, so we talked about that. So that has to be the ending or the outro. What on earth is an outro? An outroduction? Time signatures moving through 4, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4. Well, the introduction goes from 4, 4 to 5, 4 back to 4, 4. I'm going to ignore that because I don't know what that's talking about. A recurring feature, downward chromatic motion. Well, that could be the ballad section because we talked about that. And it could also be the outro because we talked about that, but we've already done that. So we're going to go ballad. So that leaves us 2 left. Hard panning of guitar. Well, there's no guitar in the intro, so it must be hard rock. And then the time signature must be the intro because that's the only thing left. So, you can use your brain to work out stuff, even if the questions are a little bit odd.
All right, I think we must be almost done. Where am I?
Oh, yes. All right, we're done. I hope you learned something, and I will see you soon.